What's up guys, this is my 7th Python video, and in this video I'm going to be talking about if statements, if else statements, and if elif else statements. Now before I talk about this, I want to briefly talk about user inputs and something that I'll do to it, in which I will use in my if statements. So in video 2, I talked about how user inputs work. So in this case I'll just create a variable, score, do input. What is your score? And then I'll print score. Now if I run this, usually people put numbers, but a flaw in this is that you can actually put characters and it'll still print it, which should be wrong and invalid since we're looking for a number here. Now to restrict what a user can put for user input, in front of input you want to put the data type you're looking for. In our case we're looking for integers, so we put int and we put 2 more parentheses to close it up. Now if we put like a character, it's going to give us an error since characters are not integers. But if we put an integer, we get the integer. You can also do this with floats, which if you remember are decimal. So now if I put a number, it's going to have a 0.0 at the end because it's a decimal. So I just want to briefly talk about that because I will be using that in my if statements. Now to the actual content, if statements. So what an if statement essentially is that this is the basic syntax for it. You put if, you put some sort of condition, whatever you want, colon, and under it you put a statement. So basically how this works is that you have some sort of condition, and if this condition is met, then this statement will run. Let's say the condition isn't met, then it's basically going to skip this whole entire state area and move on to whatever's next. And if there's nothing, then nothing prints essentially. Now I'll give an example. Now using the variable score from before in numbers, let's do an if statement on whether you pass in a test with a certain score. So let's do score equals, we're doing the exact same thing, int, because we want our values to be integers, input, what is your score? Now this part can kind of get tricky because you need to remember all the parentheses to make sure they all line up. That should be correct. That's an if statement. So my condition is going to be if score is greater than or equal to 50, because let's just say at least getting a 50 is a passing score, colon, and if you see the indent here, it means you did your if statement correct. You set it up correctly. So I want my statement to be, I'm going to print. So basically if you get a 50 or above, I want to say congrats, you passed. So now if I run this, where's my score, and I put something, if I put a value that's 50 or above, let's say I put 60, it says congrats, you passed. But now obviously, what if you get a score less than 50? How will that work? If I just simply have this, and I put something less than 50, 40, you'll see that nothing is printed. Basically what happens is that if this condition is not met, then it will skip past it. And since there's nothing beyond this line, nothing will print. So obviously a way to fix this, you can do another if statement to say score if this has to be less than equal to less than 50. Then we can say print you failed. So now if we run this and I put a score under 50, I can say you failed. So that's how if statements work, but using 2 ifs in a row is usually not what happens. Usually you don't do this. You only use the if once and then you just build upon it. And now this is going to lead to our next topic, the if else statement. So if else statement is used. So the if is the same as always. Let's just keep it the same. Now, how else works is that for else you don't need a condition. You just put else, colon, and you're good. So basically how the else statement works is that if the if statement, the condition isn't met, it automatically skips to the else statement. So whatever's in the else statement is going to print no matter what. So this is an easier way just to save time and just write less code. So if for the else statement, if I put you failed, assuming that's going to be a value less than 50, if I print run this, if I do a score that's not at least 50, it's going to say you failed. It's going to skip this line and immediately go to the else statement. That's how else statements work. It's basically if the if statement doesn't work, it skips to the else statement. Now finally, I'm going to talk about the if, else. So basically, we talked about the if else is basically two ways how something go. The if, and if that doesn't work, it goes to the else, which is two ways something can end up as the result. So basically, an if, else is more than two ways. So if you use a standard way, just the if, else, that's three ways. Think of the elif just as another if, just worded differently. So how this will work is, let's change this up. Let's do if score is greater than or equal to 90. Then we should print you got an A. And then what you do as an elif. This one you have a condition. The else statement is the only one where you don't put a condition. So for elif, let's do score. Let's just go straight to the past one. We can make this into if score is, let's say, between 80. Let's do this. Then let's say print you got a B. So now let's just do our else statement. Let's just say if you didn't get any of these scores or lower than that, I'll just say you did not get an A or B. So now if we print this, what's your score if I do something greater than 90 or 90? So you got an A. If I do like 100, got an A. If I answer between 80 and 95, like 84, I got a B. And let's say I do a value that's neither. So it's less than 80 basically. 79. You did not get an A or B. So that's basically how if, elif, and else works. It's just different ways something can turn out to be. And you can do as many elif statements as you want. You don't have to do one. You can do like 10, 100, as much as you want. So basically, to recap, an if statement is where you have a condition, and under that you have a statement. If that condition is met, that statement happened. If the condition is not met, it skips the whole if statement and goes on to whatever's after it. In this case, we have the elif after it. So if this statement is not met, the program skips this whole area and then goes to the elif, and it checks if this statement is met. If this statement is met, then it prints this. If it's not met, skips all this, goes to the else, and does whatever the else says. So that's basically the basics of if statements, if else statements, and if elif else statements. And these are definitely used a lot in programs. But yeah, that's basically it for today's video.